we are talking about complex fractions, simplifying complex fractions. Here was our video B. We're going to go to video C. This is video C, talking about another example. Here's just one more example. So again, what's a complex fraction? Complex fraction, a fraction where the numerators or denominators have a fraction. Here's a fraction inside of a fraction. Here's a fraction inside of a fraction. It just looks ugly, and we don't really want to have that there. We want to have one numerator, one denominator. So let's go through the steps. Here's our steps over here. Find out what the lowest common multiple is of that fraction and that fraction, or that fraction and, well, there's no fractions here, or that fraction and that fraction. What's the lowest common multiple of the denominators of those fractions? Then multiply, step number 2, multiply the numerator denominator by that lowest common multiple, and then simplify. So there's our examples. Step number, I guess for our video A was right there. Video B is right there. Here's video C. I got simplify 9 minus 4 over x squared times, over 3 plus 2 over x. So step number 1, we got to find out what is our lowest common multiple. Lowest common multiple of each of these fractions, 4 over x squared, because that's what's giving us trouble. 2 over x, that's what's giving us trouble. We can't have a fraction inside of that denominator, so we got to figure out what that lowest common multiple is. You could call it the lowest common denominator of that fraction and that fraction. So we've got to factor those x squared and x. Well, they're pretty much prime factored already, so all we have to do now is list the factors. X, there's got to be an x, there's got to be an x. All right, so now we raise it to the highest power that we see in any fraction. It's got to be an x squared, and there's our lowest common multiple. So step number 1, what is the lowest common multiple of the denominators of the fractions? In the numerator denominator, there's the fraction, there's the fraction. What's the lowest common multiple? Done. Step number 1, right there. Step number 2, multiply the numerator denominator by that lowest common multiple. Multiply numerator and denominator by x squared. In the red, we're going to be multiplying by 1. Take this fraction, multiplied by x squared over x squared, that's multiplying by 1. What do we get in our numerator? In our numerator, we'll call it the blue fraction, or the blue part. X squared times 9 gives us 9x squared. The next term in our numerator is negative times a positive, gives me a negative. 4 over x squared times x squared, let's go down here, 4 over x squared times x squared, or we can call it x squared over 1 to put it into fraction land. X squared cancels with x squared because the factors cancel, factor out, reduce, and simplify. It's all the same word to give us just 4. So the next term is just 4. X squared times 4 over x squared gives us just 4. All right. The denominator on the bottom is going to be x squared times all this. So x squared times 3 gives us 3x squared. Hang on a second, I'm going to change to green. I got 3x squared is my first term, that multiplication. Next multiplication is that multiplication, x squared times 2 over x. I got a positive times a positive, so my sign's going to be positive. My 2 over x times x squared over 1 is, well, x squared cancels with x to give me just 1x up here in my numerator. So it's 2 times x is the next term, 2x. And we're done multiplying by our x squared. So step number 1 and 2 are done. Now we just got to simplify. Take a look at this and remember that in my denominator, my entire denominator is 3x squared plus 2x. And that's one factor. In the numerator, 9x squared minus 4 is a factor. You can think about it as being multiplied by 1. Being multiplied by 1. So this is a factor, and this in parentheses is a factor. There's a factor that in parentheses is a factor. So now we cannot cancel the 9 with the 3 because they're not factors. The entire parentheses thing is a factor. So now we got to take a look at factoring this 9x squared minus 4. In the blue, my numerator, I'm going to put this over here and say, you know what, that was just some calculations that we used to get up to here. So this becomes 9x squared minus 4 is a difference of squares. 9x squared minus 4 is 3x squared minus 2 squared over, in the green, 3x squared plus 2x. Well, you know what? We can factor out at least a greatest common factor. We can factor out an x times 3x plus 2. X times 3x gives me 3x squared. X times plus 2 gives me 2x, and that's a good factorization down here. Alright, now I've got my blue, because we're really now just factoring out a difference of squares. Here's a difference of squares. We just rewrote it differently so that I could rewrite this as 3x minus 2 times 3x plus 2. And there's my factorization, still all over, and that's my numerator in blue. My denominator is still x over 3x plus 2. Now I've got two factors in the blue in my numerator. 3x minus 2 is a factor, 3x plus 2 is a factor. They multiply together to get my product. Here's a factor in green, x. Here's a factor in green, 3x minus 2. The 3x minus 2, or sorry, 3x plus 2 is a factor in green. The 3x plus 2 is a factor in blue in the denominator, in the numerator. So that factor, 3x plus 2, divided by 3x plus 2, becomes 1. 3x plus 2 divided by 3x plus 2 is 1. That cancels, factors, reduces, simplifies, and now we've got just 3x minus 2 over x. X cannot cancel with the x because, remember, this is our factor. This is a factor. The entire factor could cancel, but there's no 3x minus 2 in the denominator, so therefore, we're done. There's our answer, simplified answer.